Hey everybody, it's Rick, and thanks for joining me on another Inwyt Walkabout. I'm in Banff this time. I'm on a vacation with my family, enjoying the beautiful nature. I will show you a little bit more as we go along here. And today what I wanted to talk about is a little bit of a continuation on the exploration of words and how they influence how we see things, how they generate conflict, and importantly, limit our ability to problem solve. We have taken a look at, the interpretive component of words. We've also looked at how assumptions influence how we see things, and how, again, in the context of words, they have a pretty big impact on our view, our interpretation, the images that we create, and how we're often misled. And what I wanted to explore with you today is really just the use of words themselves. That, the word, even saying the word or not saying the word, has a powerful influence on our ability to communicate with each other effectively and openly. So I'm reminded, as an example, of a time where, again, back when my kids were a little bit younger, we went and saw the Harry Potter series movies. And, the arch nemesis of that movie, really the Satan of the movie, if you will, is Voldemort. And there's one movie that, I can't remember which one, where it is not okay for anybody in that society or in that particular setting to use the word Voldemort. And instead he's referred to as V, because there's a great fear in using the word Voldemort. And it's only Harry Potter who, I think, at some point says, it's saying Voldemort is not a doomsday word that all of a sudden bodes evil on all of us. We're describing a character and, somebody that we need to take on with the full word. And, when you think about the corollary of that to our everyday setting, there are words in our own language and in our everyday use where we do exactly the same thing. So, for example, I think one of the most common areas where we abbreviate or don't say words but fully understand the word behind the abbreviation or the hint are profanities and expletives. So, as an example, when we're watching a live talk show and the host is interviewing an animated guest who, gets on to telling a story of their life, and, as part of their common language, blurts out some kind of expletive, it's immediately bleeped out, right? We know exactly what the person said because of the context, or, we get the sound of the first letter or whatever it is, and we laugh at the beep. But, deep down, there is sort of a taboo, right, for that we accept around the use of that word, or the inappropriateness of that word. And there are settings as well where, when you're talking about, for example, race relationships or racism, we have a lot of derogatory terms in our language that we have determined can't be used, which is probably appropriate if you're trying to use it as in its derogatory term, but for which you can't even mention the word if you were going to say, well, what are the derogatory words that are out there? And one of those words is the N-word, where, again, it's not saying we should use it at all, but it's basically saying there's a word out there that we have determined cannot be used in our context at all, and it evokes great apprehension and fear if we get anywhere even close to having a conversation about a definition of a term. And that's an extreme example. But think about how words always have some sort of a judgment or a label that is associated with it that makes communication very dicey. And when you think about politics and all of the careful language that we have to use so as not to offend people, is we're always reading into the words that we use and making sure that we don't create some sort of offense, right? Because it can have significant repercussions. We can use words, like as an example. They don't have to be good words or bad words, but think about, the word violent. If we say we are violent, you're a violent person, I'm a violent person, we immediately have a reaction to that, where we basically may be offended by being called violent, even though it's a fact. And so, we're very careful not to label what's actually going on. And so we can't look at it. We always skirt around the issues. And the same goes for, a positive, like, it's okay to say, you're a stunningly beautiful person, except that somebody may interpret that as a compliment, and somebody may interpret that as you're just being superficial and you're just looking at my outer appearance, right? And so even that has sensitivities associated with it. So, again, words have, just by virtue of their utterance, certain powers that are far more important to us than actually what it is we're trying to actually describe. And so we are very limited at times in actually saying what actually is happening. So I'm going to take a pause here. I just want to show you the scenery here. It's beautiful. This is, again, a little bit of Banff in the background. You can hear the helicopter. That's not exactly pleasing, but the river is beautiful. So, back to the subject is, I think the takeaway that I would encourage you to consider is how powerful words are in using us. We say a word and we're trying to describe something, but the word actually uses us. We're not using the word. It has a very, very powerful impact on how we actually show up and how we actually feel in a way that can really derail, again, just open, honest conversation and seeing what's actually going on. I'll leave you with that. And, I think one of the other things that's always kind of amusing is, again, how words, the same word can mean totally different things depending on, again, the context. And I recently reminded myself, saw a YouTube video on a Finnish comedian by the name of Ismo. You may be familiar with him, who essentially has an entire monologue on the challenges of coming over as a Finnish citizen and learning English. And he has this entire monologue on the difficulty of using the word ass appropriately. And again, I would encourage you to look at that because, again, it speaks to how subtleties and context of words really drive how we use them and how they make us feel and how we respond. And it's another twist on essentially showing how we create meanings and interpretations of words that ultimately use us more than we use them. So that's it for today. I hope you have a super day. I'm going to go on a little hike with my family today. I'm looking forward to that. And I look forward to the next time that we chat. So I'm Rick. Again, this is Inwyt Walkabout, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.